Hi, HR Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we're joined by Michael Walsh, who's Senior Director of Global Talent Management and Organisational Effectiveness at Eaton. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
I love seeing you again because I'm always jealous of that wall behind you and the decoration of the bike.
It's a labor of love. It was my daily commuter in New York City, and now it hangs on the wall.
Yeah. So for people listening, not thinking, and what are you talking about, Chris? Michael's got his old commuter bike and dismantled it and cleaned it up and displayed it on the wall as like an art piece, and it looks super cool. I'm just jealous every time. So a lot's been going on with you. Tell us what you've been up to. I know you've got some announcements to talk about now on the show as well. Really exciting.
Yeah, great. So things are great. Things are going really, really well. Everybody's adapting to the pandemic, and I think we're starting to look forward in terms of what is the quote new normal going to look like, and how do we move forward as we get vaccine and all these kinds of things moving forward. And I kind of took the opportunity to write a book. So I've published a book since I've last been on the show. It's called HR Analytics Essentials You Always Wanted to Know. And it's really intended to bring HR analytics to everyone. It started out as I was writing it for one of the classes that I teach. And so it started out as a book that was going to be used in the classroom. And as I started writing it and got with the publisher and we started making tweaks and things, it's really now applicable both for the classroom, but also an everyday HR manager, as well as HR analytics teams. I think there's or
anyone really, right? Anyone who wants to understand it, the topic. I think that's what's great about it, is you've written it in a language where even someone like me can understand it.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's very colloquial. It's written in a way where, honestly, the way that I wrote it was I had some lecture slides. I created slides, and I really just lectured and recorded myself lecturing, and then tweaked it and modified it and turned it into a book. And so it reads very much like you're sitting in a classroom listening to a lecture. And there are online resources that go with it, and videos and tutorials and that kind of thing too, that are hopefully bring HR analytics to a really practical place. Because I think, the reason I wrote the book was when I started teaching this class, there really wasn't anything out there that I thought was appropriate for really learning the essentials or the basics of HR analytics. And so thought, what, let's just write it. Let's do it on our own. So it's been a kind of a 2.5 year journey. And it has a lot of case studies in it. So, you read the chapter and then you get to apply it via case study at the end. So hopefully it really brings kind of HR analytics to life for folks in their day-to-day work.
People analytics, HR analytics, workforce analytics, there's quite a few different names out there. It means different things, different people. How do you describe HR analytics?
So in the book, and I actually open with this in the book, and I say, if you ask 10 people, you'll get 12 different answers. So I define it really as using data that we collect on or about people in an organization in order to make better business decisions. So it's very broad. And that's the thing about HR analytics. And that's the power of analytics that I hope comes through the pages in the book, which is, it can be applicable to any role you have in any organization. It is such a broad topic. Once you realize how powerful it can be, the sky's the limit. First chapter goes through kind of what is analytics and how do we define it, et cetera. And then it has a personal self-assessment. And so there's this quadrant that I've created, and it's based on your individual capability paired with your organizational readiness.
Oh, that's great.
And so you have 4 quadrants, and you match those things up into 4 different roles that you can play in analytics. Because I'm sure, as so many people have said on your show, if your organization's not ready for heavy statistics and regression modeling and random forest modeling and all these kinds of things that are thrown out there, they're going to fail. And so you've really got to be able to meet your organization where it's at with your individual capability. And where those two things match up, that's really where you can find the power. And then it's just a journey from there. And you take steps to increase both your capability and the organizational readiness.
So whenever someone asks the questions, where do I start? Is that what
Yeah.
is that your recommendation? Start by
Uh,
understanding where you are, where the business is, and then go from there.
Yeah, exactly right. That's exactly right. And actually, chapter 6 in my book has it's called "Where Do I Start?" And so,
Literally. Okay.
yeah, literally, it's called "Where Do I Start?" And so, what I've done is taken each of those 4 quadrants, depending on where you fall in those quadrants, and I've broken it out functionally by HR. So,
Okay.
if you fall into this quadrant and you want to do a project in recruiting, here are some ideas on how to get started. If you fall into this other quadrant and you want to do a project in benefits, here's where you should start. So it outlines all sorts of ways that you can get started just to take the first step, and I think people are so petrified oftentimes by analytics, unnecessarily so, that they're so afraid to take that first step. And my goal for this book is that we get people over that hump.
Yeah. What's the fear related to? Is it the fear of failure, the fear that they don't understand the language, the terminology?
Yeah,
What's
it's all of the above. It spans several different things. I think a lot of people are afraid of numbers inherently and just say, well, if it
I'm
has a number,
that's me. That's me, by the way. That's why I have a co-founder who handles all the finances. I'm just like, no. Let me be over here being creative and doing product stuff.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I think there's the fear of the numbers. And I used to be, I didn't grow up as a math nerd. I kind of discovered math nerdiness as I got older and discovered statistics. But really, when it comes to HR analytics specifically, there is so much room for art along with the science. And, so Chris, we need people like you who don't necessarily love the numbers, but who can dream up these great ideas for where to use analytics to impact the business and to impact product and to impact all these things. So there's definitely a lot of art and science. So I think the first fear is really kind of the numbers. And, if it's numbers, it's got to be exact. Well, in statistics, we know it's not exact. That's why we have standard error. And that's a standard thing that we talk about in a lot of the projects. And so, once you get over that hump, I think there's still some fear about, what if I present a number and I'm not an expert in doing the analysis, but I present a number and a business decision is made based on that number and I was wrong?
Oh, yeah.
I've heard that a lot more recently than I have before, which is good because it means people are using analytics and they're taking those first steps. But what if I'm wrong? And that's why I tell people this is always an iterative process. And you always have to include business leaders along the process so that you're not presenting, this grand golden nugget at the end. You're bringing them along the whole process to make sure that you have integrity in your data, et cetera.
From there, once the company has they've identified the company, where the company's at, where they're at, they kind of hopefully overcome that fear, and they kind of honed in on a particular area they feel like they can add value. What are the typical mistakes that you typically see people make?
Yeah. So once you've shown that you can add value, I think people run too fast. I think, there's a lot of really kind of design work that's done when you do any kind of project. Once you have your data in good shape and things, pushing the button to run the regression model or whatever it might be doesn't take that long. What takes the time is gathering the inputs beforehand, making sure that you're cleaning the data and screening the data, et cetera. I think once you find that value, once you determine where you can add value, there's a tendency to say, well, let's just take this thing that we've done and spread it as wide as we possibly can. And in an organization, certainly like Eaton, where I work, in a global organization, that's maybe not appropriate. You've got to still go back to the drawing board and figure out what each of those regions need, or each of those businesses, what type of analytics do they need? And it's not going to be the one that you just got done with. It's not going to be the same project, because every business, every region is going through something different and needs different things. So I think the goal is to meet the business where they are, and that could be different in an organization from region to region, or business to business, or even product to product within a business.
So it's not as simple then as understanding. You kind of have the wider business goals, but then of course within each function, maybe even each country or region, there's going to be a different subset of challenges that those leaders are facing. How do we identify those? Talking
to people. I mean, this is where the non-numbers part comes in, and before I do any kind of project, whether it be in the OE space or the analytics space or whatever type of work we're doing, you've got to get out and shake some hands and kiss some babies.
How are you doing that practically? Like, especially now, are you literally just making a conscious effort, for example, of reaching out to that leader, regardless of any else happening, and just saying, can we set up a call? I'd love to hear about what you're working on, what's going well, what's not, what we possibly can help with.
Exactly. Well, and that's the good thing about having a regular cadence of calls with your business leaders anyway. For me, when we went into the pandemic, it was, okay, we're not going to meet in person anymore. We're just going to have Zoom calls. Having that regular cadence helps you keep a kind of a pulse on the business and what's going on and where you need to focus your efforts anyway. So it wasn't a huge effort for me personally. So I would say if you're in any kind of support function, you want to make sure that you have those regular touch base calls with your business leaders. And if you need to cancel and it's, monthly calls or bi-weekly calls, that's really all it takes. Just kind of to catch up and figure out what's going on and how you can help.
Is that a skill, do you think, you've had to develop? Because many, people within your field, not to generalize too much, many of them are not extroverts. Many are not, you know what I mean, right? So the communication piece, the storytelling piece, is sometimes some of those softer skills lack, for example.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's definitely something that I had to develop. I mean, I grew up in consulting. And so for me, it was all about, we delivered a project to a client, that's great, but what's next? And how do we turn this into something more, or how do we help more, or which client are we going to next? And so that notion of kind of continually building that rapport and that relationship with folks was just kind of ingrained in me as I was growing up in the business world, in my professional career. And I think, I have a tendency to like to crunch numbers and sit in my office here and do the analytics as well. So it still takes conscious effort to get out and talk to people and things, but it's absolutely necessary. And if you don't do it, you will see the consequences later. And so I've seen so many times where it's just paid off in spades, just keeping those relationships up and understanding what's going on. I
can see already how the consulting background would really help. Were you aware, were you conscious at the time of how impactful that would be on your career now? No way.
I mean, it was, when I first started out, it was, as I said, kind of all about winning projects and those kinds of things. And that mentality you just learn that's the business world. That's all I knew coming out of graduate school. That's what I knew. And so that's really just kind of how I think about the world of business, and as it relates to project-based work and those kinds of things. And even, since I've moved internal in an internal role, that's just how I operate. Yeah.
One other big challenge is, and it's a common one, we've spoken about it a lot, but I do want to bring it up again, is, for many HR practitioners, they're inundated and your peers with new technologies, new shiny tools. And many times they do an incredible job with the marketing, and what you see on the surface may not necessarily be reflected in the guts of the product, in the back end of what it does.
For sure. Yeah. And this is one of my big soapboxes. So cut me off when I've talked too much.
Okay.
I think, you articulated it perfectly, and it's, the new shiny object that everybody's interested in. And it's, the marketing is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Mostly because a lot of these products come from tech companies, not HR companies, or not companies that have HR experts. They're experts in technology and how to market technology. And that's great. And we need that. But my challenge for HR folks is to say, ask 2 more questions, dig 2 layers deeper than what you're being presented. And really the only way to know how to do that is to become kind of educated on how these things are put together. So things like dashboards, predictive models, even things like,
or when they say AI, is it really AI? They love to throw around. They love throwing around AI at the moment.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too. Knowing statistics the way that we do, if I throw 500 variables into an equation, some of them are going to pop out as statistically significant, and you're going to be able to say, look, someone's tone of voice when we ask them this particular question, or if their eyebrow moves up and down when they answer this particular question, that's the predictor of if someone will be successful on the job or not. Well, that's entirely untrue. But because we've thrown so many things into this model that we've built, those things just pop out. Capitalizing on chance is what we call it. And so if I, flip the coin, if I had 100 people flip a coin 10 times, somebody would land on heads every single time just by chance alone.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're seeing in some of these AI models. And, it really takes a keen sense of what's going on behind the scenes to be able to diagnose what's really going on.
Let's get practical for a second. What are the common questions that you ask when you're meeting with a particular vendor? I'm sure you've got some go-to questions that I'm sure you've got a couple where it's going to get them to do a bit of hard work on their end as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first question is, can you send me your technical manual?
Oh, straight away. Wow.
Straight away. First question I ask.
They're like, oh my God, we're in trouble. What's the technical manual? Or if they say they don't have one, even more worrying.
Then conversation's over. I mean, if you don't have
I would never think of that, by the way. Like, I didn't even know that. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a technical manual.
Oh yeah, for sure. And ideally, what they've done in their technical manual is described exactly how they have developed the tool. And exactly the research that they've done, the studies they've conducted to make sure that their tool is doing what you think it's doing. And if they can't produce that, then in my mind, it's game over.
Already.
Because if you can't articulate,
even if they're a startup and they just no, like that, they don't get a pass.
No, they don't. Unless they're giving me their technology for free and they're partnering with me to do a study. If that's the case,
then then it makes sense because they're obviously at that stage.
Yeah,
okay, they passed that one. They've got. Right. What are you looking for in there? So so when you do get that, what are you looking for in there?
So then I'm reading through and thinking about, what studies did they do to create their technology? How did they create? I mean, all of these technologies have some sort of algorithm in the background. And so the question becomes, what did they do? What studies did they use to create their algorithm? And sometimes those studies are based on a population that I might be using this for. So let's use recruiting as an example, like a recruiting assessment, for example. If they've done an assessment, created an assessment, and they've done the studies on, let's say, psychology undergraduate students, and I'm trying, and that's how they validated their assessment. They say that, that group of people who do well on their assessment do well on some measure of job performance. And I'm trying to use this assessment for senior executives. It doesn't match, right? You validated your assessment on college students. I'm trying to use it for executives. Those two populations are very different.
Yeah.
And so it's apples and Ferraris. I mean,
even that far apart. All right. So they passed that test. What's the next thing you're looking at?
Yeah. Then I think it's all about, can we modify, again, when we go back to algorithms and how they work and, those kinds of things. Then my next question is, I know you're taking this off the shelf algorithm and you're going to implement it in our organization. That's great. Can we modify the algorithm at all? Or is it a black box that is proprietary and it's something that you don't modify? This one is really tough.
Give me an example of what you would want to modify it for.
So in particular, weightings for various constructs that they might be measuring within
the weight.
algorithm.
Okay.
Yeah, the weightings. And this may or may not be a deal breaker. If they can modify the algorithm, that absolutely sends them to, we're going to very much consider you. If they can't, then I need to understand more about why they can't. And it may be because they're benchmarking off of the rest of their clients. It may be that, that's fine. I understand that. If it's because it's this black box that we don't like to give out to the public and we're not going to share with you, to me, that says more about their partnership than about the actual algorithm. Because I want a vendor who's going to be a partner, a true partner with me and my organization, to get to know us, to understand what values we find valuable, where we want to take the organization and our workforce, et cetera. And so that speaks a lot to that partnership. Yeah.
I hear that a lot from your peers. They don't really want off the shelf plug and play kind of, they want more tailored partner solutions where they can partner with those because again, there's not always a one size fits all approach that works. as well.
And that's exactly the point. You can't take an off-the-shelf product and expect it to work, 100% of the time in 100% of the organizations. That's not how things work. That's not how people work.
Yeah. And of all people to do that with, you're not going to get away with that with the analytics community.
No way. No way.
You're not going to get away with that.
You're barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
For sure.
What about the team? There's this kind of misconception that we need, in order to do people analytics, HR analytics, we need so many different skill sets to be able to do this. Whereas I know some companies got 50 people and there's a company with 5 people doing just as much work. And putting it out there, right? I don't want to generalize people's work and what they're doing, but where do companies start? Like, do they need to go all in and hire, a huge team to do this, or how should they go about doing that?
So I've got two answers. The first is, if you're trying to set up a centralized analytics function in HR that focuses only on analytics, I think you start with what I would consider the leader of the group. And so I've played this role a couple times in organizations where I've worked, where I've actually started the function. And that needs to be somebody who can speak the language of HR and the business, but also who knows enough about analytics, statistics, to where you can show the value of the function. Because you're never going to get more resources until you can show that, in fact, this makes sense and we're going to do something with it. Now, that said, every single HR person, regardless of their role, can use some sort of analytics to make better and more efficient decisions. And I think that's the part that we get hung up on, is how do we, when we say HR analytics, I think a lot of people focus on that centralized group, and how do we maximize that centralized group? What does the org structure look like? How many resources should we have, et cetera? If you can tap into the collective power of your HR generalists, HR business partners, whatever it may be, that can be 1,000 times more powerful, because not only do they know where the pain points are, but they know what data they have available. They know what, very specific things like what fields they use and all these kinds of things, even in, the HRIS system and all that. If you can teach them how to fish, so to speak, your analytics journey, A, goes much faster, and B, can be much more powerful, because now you have a whole army of people thinking about this kind of stuff every single day. Yeah. And I'm convinced that once you see the power of analytics and how you can use it, you never turn that switch off. You always think about even the world around you, in headlines you read in the newspaper, or in things you hear on the news, or you're asking yourself, those critical questions. It's really about teaching critical thinking skills, and how do you dissect the information that you hear. And that's not just in HR, that's your entire life, personal and professional.
So in many ways, we should kind of start within our own community, HR community, before, if we haven't done, there's no point building a dedicated people analytics team if we haven't educated our current HR, our team as well, and understand those core skills, those critical thinking skills, and how to analyze it and use it and make it user-friendly for them as well. Do you think the people analytics function should sit underneath HR or should report into the business? Because I'm seeing mixed kind of opinions on that.
Classic worst answer is it depends. It depends on the organization. I mean, I think there are benefits to both. I think reporting into HR gives you access to everything you need access to, ideally, and you have that kind of people lens. The reason why I've seen it put in HR a lot of times is because HR leadership teams will say, well, we don't want HR data going outside of HR, or people data going outside of HR. And so that kind of firewall between HR and the rest of the organization is maintained. So I've seen that as the rationale for why oftentimes. I think if HR analytics reports directly into a business, I think that's good in that you can now use the business analytics team as more capacity. And I've done that myself when I've started analytics functions. Instead of hiring a bunch of people into my team, I've tapped on resources in the business.
They already exist, right? That's a good thing. They already exist in finance. They already exist in market. That's the thing that people, I always say, look in your own business first. There's so many people within your own organization. Like Dawn Klinghoffer over at Microsoft, their head of people analytics. She was in their finance department. before moving into leading the people analytics team.
Sure.
As well.
Yeah.
So
well, and even people, like product marketing people, people who are doing marketing analytics, and people who are doing, product analytics and customer analytics. I mean, tap on those resources too. There are so many people out there looking for cool projects to do. And so, if you can rope those people into some of those very beginning stages, I think you can really kind of amplify your impact on the organization.
Yeah.
And the other thing is they already have the tools.
They already have the tools. They're doing it with your customers, right? And a lot of those tools can be used in the exact same way for our employees. That's what's crazy sometimes. It's like, we're already doing it with our customers. Why we're not doing it with our people? It's
exactly right.
It's interesting, right? When you see it that way as well. Yeah. Obviously, during the last 12 months, people analytics leaders like yourself and teams have never been more busy as the businesses call upon them to help them in so many ways as well. Do you think this has accelerated people analytics in organizations and the importance? Yeah,
for sure. I think there was a call to action that was external to every organization. And analytics functions, and even talent management functions, and just HR functions as a whole really have had to come to the table and think about so many things on such an accelerated timeline. I mean, the future of work and working remotely, and how do we do that, and what technologies do we need, and what is our philosophy on flexible work, and all of these questions have come.
Wellbeing is a big one, right?
Well, oh my goodness, huge. And analytics teams can absolutely help inform some of those decisions. But hats off to the HR function as a whole for answering the call.
Yeah, 100%.
Some of these things, we were walking down the path towards, how do we become more flexible? How do we address well-being of our employees? But to come that fast to the party and come up with some really creative solutions and things that work for everybody, and have continued to work for people in a sustained manner. Wow. Talk about demonstrating the value of the function. I think we've really, really taken that to the next level.
Yeah. It's interesting because the breakthrough wasn't in the technology, from a technology perspective. The breakthrough was a mental breakthrough, right? For leaders to be like, we can do this. Cultural, better way of saying, it was a cultural breakthrough of all of that red tape. or why are we doing it this way? Oh, it's because we've always done it that way, right?
For sure.
And we proved
I had to do it that way.
Yeah, exactly. And we proved that in some cases that we did it overnight. Companies went remote, literally, to be able to do it. So it wasn't technology that was holding us back.
Well, and the interesting thing is, now if you look at the research coming out, it's not that. I think a lot of organizations think, oh well, now everyone's going to want to work from home. Those who can. I mean, let's face it.
Yes.
A lot of jobs can't be done from home. You can't,
you can't build a car at home.
Yeah, exactly. It would be a very slow process. Like a bicycle behind me. You can't put that in. So a lot of companies, I think, have the fear that everyone's going to work from home, want to work from home all the time. But if you look at the research coming out, that's not what people want. People want a balance.
They want flexibility. They want a choice. If they want that, that's the thing, is a choice, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think a lot of companies are starting to realize now, okay, we don't have to sell all of our corporate real estate. We don't have to, get rid of all of our
There's a big
debts.
panic, right? The big panic.
Yeah. So I think it's just, how do we continue to adapt in the same way that we have in the last 12 months.
Yeah, like I'm here in the office right now with you, so behind this wall, so a few of my team members, they enjoy being here. They enjoy coming in, collaborating. For me, it's also like a mental separation. I like kind of leaving the home and kind of that journey to work, even though it's like a 5-minute bike ride, it's still like a mental transition from home to work. I don't mind working from home. I did it for 6 months. I know I can do it. But I just enjoy being here. And if you don't, and again, it depends on your lifestyle, right? People have got kids they need to take care of. They've got parents they need to take care of. They've got, again, it really just depends on where you are, what stage you're at in life, and what's happening as well.
I mean, even if you have a goldfish that you have to take care of, I mean, it's the thing about,
Can you imagine replying back saying, sorry, can't be an office worker. I'm a goldfish, you know, got to take care of him. You know,
I heard on
he's
HR
got a short
Leaders podcast that I can work from home because I have a goldfish.
Yeah. Or you can be like, oh, I can't get into work today, guys. My bike's dismantled on the wall. So it's going to take me a while to put it together so I can travel in. So, and obviously I don't want to go on public transport, you know, so
right.
Can't come.
I mean, in some respects, you're right. That mental break of going into the office and then, you know, switching that off as much as you can, having the commute home and being able to focus completely 100% when you get home. I think there is something to that. And I think, you know, that going back into the office and being flexible and, man, that's going to be, that's how we have to move forward.
Yeah. And we're seeing it with the research as well that's coming out, where it's becoming it's impacting the younger generation more, who are just coming in. Imagine if your first job, I can't even imagine my first job out of school being the way it's been over the last year.
Yeah.
Because you learn so much by being in the office and bumping into people. You can see and feel the atmosphere, the culture, the conversations you overhear. Just the coaching, the mentoring, and just I know we can recreate a lot of this. I'm not saying you can't do it, but it's I don't think many companies have really figured it out or understand the real impact. But listen, before I let you go, if there's sort of one parting takeaway piece of advice you'd give to someone perhaps who's new on their journey into this area, what would that be? Obviously, you need to grab a copy of the book first and foremost. Yeah. But without the book, because I know I was going to give you the easy answer there, and you're going to be like, grab a copy of the book. There's a lot of advice in the book, but if there's one thing, what piece of advice you'd give to them, or you'd give to your younger self, let's say, what would that be?
Yeah, take the first step. Don't be afraid to take the first step. You know, I think the idea, and make it real to you in your role, whatever role that may be. Analytics can apply to any role in any organization, even if it's just qualitative analysis and you go and you talk to a lot of people and then you boil that down to a bunch of notes and you figure out what are the themes and what are people trying to say. That's a type of analytics, and that can be so valuable as well. So, you know, I would say just take the first step off the starting line. And once you get that, take the next step and the next step. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be over-engineered. I think make it real to you and your role and take the first step.
Amazing. And where can people grab a copy of the book?
It's out now. So it's out on Amazon, both in the US and in the UK, or you can order it from the publisher website, which is Vibrant Publishers. You can grab a copy out there.
Amazing. Well, the link's already below. So if you're listening, click the link below, grab a copy of the book. Also, make sure you go and connect on LinkedIn as well with Michael. But apart from that, it's great seeing you again.
You too.
Congratulations on the book. I'm really happy for you. I know how much work goes into it, given how many guests I have. So it's like Chris is like having a baby, buying a house, getting married, writing a book as well. But I think, as I said before, the way you've written it, in a language that I don't think there's many books in this space out there that a layman like myself or anyone can kind of pick up and just get going with the practical examples and, you know, the self-assessments. I think you've done an amazing job. So congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. If nothing else, there's a whole appendix that has kind of Excel basics. And I think everybody
That's for me. That's me.
Yeah, hey,
I still don't know how to do Excel formulas. Would you believe that? Literally, I'm like, Shane, make me the Excel formulas and then I can just fill it in after as well. But that's just like again, but if I ask Shane to do something creative on my end, it's the same scenario. We have our strengths, but I try my best.
Perfect match. Perfect team.
Well, no worries. Well, enjoy the rest of your day and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Sounds great, Chris. Thanks a lot.